So people say they want Apple to do well. People say they want to hurt Microsoft. This is the main reason they want OS X free. Well, all I have to say is Apple is doing very well, and setting OS X free is not, I repeat, is not going to hurt Microsoft. Anyone who wants OS X on a PC deep down don't want a Mac. If you want a Mac, why release it to PC? If the guy's sitting at the table arguing, I want OS X on a PC, why? Unless you plan on buying a PC and sticking OS X on it, why does it matter to you? If you like Macs, and you're going to buy Macs anyway, what does OS X being on the PC matter? Because it's a delusion to think people wouldn't stop buying Macs like they are today and just buy a cheap PC and throw OS X on it. Anyone who denies this is just... they just don't understand, or they do understand and they refuse to admit they're wrong. Anyone who says OS X coming out for the PC wouldn't hurt Mac hardware sales is wrong. Would they make up the profit loss in what they sell in OS X and market share? Probably so. That's not the point. The point is, who wants OS X on a PC? People who don't want to buy Macs. Period. That's the only option for it. If you want OS X on a PC, you don't want a Mac. Because if you wanted to buy a Mac, what would it matter if it was on the PC? It wouldn't. People can say, well, it's for my business, or I want OS X on my business. You think these big businesses are going to switch from Microsoft to OS X because OS X is all of a sudden on a PC? No. If big businesses were going to use OS X, they'd get Macs. They're not going to switch over from an operating system to another operating system. That's no different than switching hardwares. That's no different than going out and buying all Macs for your office. It's not going to happen. New startup businesses might, and there'll be a few switch, but for the most part, businesses and stuff are going to stick with what they got. I mean, I understand people wanting OS X to make their job easier, but in a way that's kind of selfish, because it would totally disrupt the Apple flow. Anybody who thinks turning OS X loose won't hurt hardware sales is very, very, very wrong. And Apple don't care if OS X on a PC would make more money. They want a Mac in every home, not OS X in every home. Apple's doing fine enough to not have to worry about turning OS X loose. That's just another worry. If OS X was free to be installed on cheap PCs, then all kinds of problems would occur. I don't want to take a chance to ruin OS X just to knock Microsoft down a notch. I mean, people really think hardware sales would continue the same as now with OS X on the PC? No way. Apple won't sacrifice hardware market share for software market share. We have alternatives. People just don't know. People just don't want to buy a Mac. If you want OS X, get a Mac. Why do you want a PC and run OS X on it? Why? You still won't be able to go out and use all those GPUs like you want. You think just because you put OS X on a PC, it's going to be just like a PC, only OS X? No, there's not going to be drivers. There's not going to be anything. Not at first, anyway. You're not going to be able to go out and get OS X, put it on your PC, and then have no problems. Okay? I mean, if you look at all the simple shit that Apple would have to deal with, from drivers to cheap hardware, it wouldn't hurt Microsoft. And I wouldn't kill OS X to do that. Now, everybody knows that if you have a 4-year-old PC with a 4-year-old GPU in it, and you install OS X on that PC, it's not going to work. And if it does, can Apple guarantee the experience is going to be smooth and fast like it would be on their Mac? No. And Apple's all about experience. If somebody installed OS X on a 4-year-old PC, had some kind of weird GPU and didn't work with OS X, Apple would get blamed, people. Apple would get blamed. And Apple does not need to deal with that bullshit. Now, what about the 1 million Final Cut Studio users? That's 1 million Macs out there. What about Shake and iLife and Final Cut Studio? All this on a PC? No fucking way. PC has the world, and you people want them to have OS X too? You want them to have our Macs too? You forget about the PC hardware companies in your haste to hurt Microsoft. PC hardware companies own the world, and they would only gain from OS X. No fucking way. We have alternatives. Just buy a Mac. The PC hardware manufacturers would gain all the way around. People would be putting OS X on their machines. People would be putting Windows on their machines. They would have absolutely no loss whatsoever. They would only gain. They would have iLife and Shake and Final Cut Studio, and the PC users have it all. They have the compatibility. They have the applications. They have the mass market. They have the support of the public, because that's what most people are on. Okay? They have everything. PCs have everything. And you all want them to have this too, huh? You want them to have our OS X, our Shake, our Final Cut Studio, our iLife. You want them to have this, just like they got everything else? I don't think so, guys. They want OS X, you're going to have to sacrifice and just buy a Mac. Goes back to my point, people wouldn't buy a Mac if they would have already. It's not about giving Microsoft competition. The people that go out and get OS X if it was released are the people that they ain't going to buy no Mac. If they would have done it already. Denying the problems that would arise is just ignorant. Saying OS X would stay stable is wrong. No one has an answer for this. Could Apple guarantee the experience they want to give on every machine? Could they guarantee the experience they wanted to give on every machine like they do now? They can on a Mac because they know our hardware. But how can they guarantee a good, stable experience on your mom's 6-year-old PC? They can't. And Apple is all about good experience. People want to say, oh, let's throw OS X out there and let's just make all kinds of money. But they're not looking at anything else. They're not looking at the really big picture and the little things that matter. So if you imagine someone installs OS X on a 4-year-old PC with some weird GPU that no one's heard of, do they have to find drivers? Are the drivers even made? Of course OS X couldn't have all the drivers included like it does now, because it knows exactly what GPU your machine's going to have, so it has the drivers. Now it only uses a set amount of GPU, so Apple can guarantee those drivers are going to be there. They couldn't if OS X was free. If all these problems, and it would cause all these problems. People would be calling Apple 24 hours a day asking why OS X isn't working, and OS X would not be as stable or solid as it is now. The hardware has a lot to do with how great OS X is. OS X deserves more than a $500 PC, and having it installed on a cheap PC isn't worth it just to hurt Microsoft. People have the same options now as they do if it was free. The only difference is they gotta buy Mac hardware. It points to people not wanting to buy Apple hardware. It's proof. If people don't want to buy Apple hardware, they don't deserve Apple's operating system. People wouldn't want OS X on a PC if everyone bought a Mac. The license would be a big clusterfuck because all the hardware companies have deals with Microsoft and, iLife and Final Cut Studio, Shake, all that bullshit. And anyone who's okay with that is crazy. PCs, like I said, they have it all. They have all the options in the world. The only option they don't have is using OS X legally. And you want to give them this too? Screw that. PC hardware makers are gods. And with OS X on a PC, they'd even be that much bigger gods and unstoppable. People wouldn't buy Macs when they could go to Best Buy and get a $500 PC with OS X on it. People who think Apple sales would stay up and go up are crazy. I've talked to many people who have told me that they would have got a PC if OS X was on it. All these problems just to dethrone Microsoft? No, thank you. It wouldn't hurt Microsoft to make it worth it. And how are they going to deal with companies like Firestar? Clones would pop up all over. Again, people ignore history, say it wasn't the reason, and deny what happened back in the 80s. The last time the Mac OS was free, it was a disaster. To say that wasn't the cause is just denial. People tend to ignore all these things because all they want is OS X free. Well, back then it was a disaster because things were different, and that wasn't everything that had to do with it. Blah, 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 blah. The reasons to keep OS X exclusive to Apple far outweigh the reasons to free it. Free it to give people choices, but they have the same options now as they would if it was free. People can use OS X if they want. People can buy OS X if they want. They can use iLife and Final Cut Studio. All they have to do is get Mac hardware. So what are people wanting? To give PC hardware makers even more leverage and bury Apple even more? The statement alone proves people won't buy Apple hardware. If people wanted OS X, they'd buy a Mac. But these people want OS X on a PC. Why? To give Microsoft competition? The competition out there now is out there now. It's just not on PC hardware. It's proof people don't want to pay for Mac hardware. Anyone who would put OS X on a PC just proves they wouldn't buy Mac hardware. That's my opinion. I mean, come on, guys. Put OS X on a PC? Really? I mean, really? Oh, OS 10 on the PC. That's what you want. That's what you guys want. You're so convinced that it's going to help Apple that you're not seeing what it's going to take away from them, guys. And where it would help them in one area, it would destroy them in another. And like I said before, the PCs, they have the world, and you want OS 10 on a PC too? It just baffles me, guys. OS 10 is ours. It's ours. And you motherfuckers can't have it. End of story.